Arsenal come streaming forward now in surely what will be their last attack. A good ball by Dixon, finding Smith. For Thomas, charging through the midfield. Thomas, it's up for grabs now. Thomas, right at
the end. Hello and welcome to Gooners in the USA. New year, new Arsenal, Mike.
Yes, new Arsenal indeed. And
second place is in our reach, right?
Oh, we're just like 20 to 25 points away from it. It's in our grasp. How was your boys' weekend? I saw various pictures in media outlets all over the world of you, just you and Eric and your boys and Dele Alli just all having a fucking great time this weekend.
You know, we had a wonderful time. We were up in Vale, Beaver Creek, doing a ski weekend. Typically we bring wives, but they've all got knocked up and had various amounts of children.
Do you bring your wives, or you just bring wives?
Well, they could be wives of other people, so maybe. No, it was a great weekend. I assume you saw the picture of us in robes.
Oh yeah, the robe life. L-Y-F-E. That was the most freaking obnoxious thing I've ever seen.
So we typically, and you know what's even more obnoxious is if you actually hit that hashtag and see some of the other pictures of people. But we typically stay in my wife's family have a place, and they were there, and we're like, no, we're not doing our guys' weekend with your family. So we rented a place, and each bedroom had a robe. And so we were like, that's obviously what we're wearing to get to the hot tub, right?
Well, I wish Dele would have worn one, but anyway, welcome back to reality, and just want to introduce our guest. We've been waiting a little while to get Drew on. I'm excited about it, and he's worked his way through a near-death flu experience to be here.
Thank you.
The dedication's unbelievable, Drew. He's someone we've come to know through the podcast community, which is a community we have forced our way into, despite their multiple attempts to keep us out.
He's cultivated recreate Twitter names, my man.
Exactly. And he's cultivated quite the reputation for essentially being the anti-Mike. In other words, he's an American who actually understands and knows football back and forth. And hopefully we'll find out, a little bit why he's known as an authority on all things German football. Kind of your thing, isn't it, Drew?
It is indeed. It is indeed.
And I hear you have a couple of nicknames that you wanted us to make sure to refer you as. So
I didn't, but I know what's going to happen. So let's hear them anyway.
Welcome to the Baron of the Bundesliga, the Angela Merkel of Arsenal, the Führer of football, the Chancellor of Chuba Abcom, and the Kaiser of Permanente.
Oh God,
I like it.
It's Drew Thompson. Welcome to the podcast, Drew.
Hey guys, good. Hello. You could say hello and guten Abend, which means hello and good evening. There you go.
Oh, and he loves the German and hates the French, by the way. We have to point that out.
I actually dislike the French highly. I've never met living in New York City, you get so many French tourists that roll through, and no offense, but 99.8% of them are absolute melts. I can't be bothered.
Drew, 99.8% of our listeners are French.
I mean, hey, listen. Free croissants? Anybody? No?
It's why
At least I didn't call you the douchebag of Dortmund. I mean, that's one of them.
I'd be more accepting of that one. I kind of like that. Let's go with that one. I like it.
That would have been wrong, but hey, if the name fits, wear it. So I don't know the backstory of how you became the go-to guy for all things German related to Arsenal. So, I mean, I know you live in New York. Yep. What's the connection? Where did it begin with Arsenal and the German connection? I'm assuming some sort of family connection.
It actually started with German football first. When I grew up, my best friend growing up, Rob Belishy, he lived literally about a 30-second walk from my apartment building in a different building in a neighborhood. A neighborhood living in New York City, it's called Riverdale. It's got a very large Jewish community, and particularly back then when I was growing up, there's a lot of German Jews here. Robbie's Oma and Opa, which is granddad and grandma and granddad, they were Auschwitz survivors.
Wow.
And then they came to the U.S. Robbie's mom was born in Germany, but they moved here when she was very, very young. And then Robbie was born here, but Opa was a huge Bayern Munich fan, and I've been playing since I don't know, age 6 or 7, roughly, give or take. And Robbie also played And whenever I hung out with Robbie, he would talk about Bayern Munich, and Robbie started supporting Kaiserslautern first. That was the first team he supported. But that's when I first started getting into German football. I became an Arsenal supporter because Dennis Bergkamp came, and Dennis Bergkamp is my favorite player ever. So that's where that connection started.
He's responsible for 80% of Arsenal supporters in the last 20 years, anyway.
Absolutely, and then Henry's the other 20%. Yeah. So, so that's how the story began. And I played all through, all through high school. I got into coaching when I was 19, and then I've just been coaching ever since. So. That's the connection. And then, like I said, I've just kept up with German football while also supporting Arsenal over the years. I started really paying close attention to Dortmund, maybe about 1998 or so. And then I've been close with them ever since as well. So that's kind of where the connection comes in.
Have you been to the Yellow Wall for Dortmund?
No, that's like
that bucket list stuff for you.
Yeah, that's the top of the bucket list.
Yeah, you got to do that. We'll have a contest sometime where we'll give away a trip to the Yellow Wall, sponsored by bagofdicks.com. They don't realize that yet, but we'll skip like 80 bags of dicks and save up the money, and then send you to the Yellow Wall to report. So I want to compliment you on something, because you've obviously gone to marketing school or public relations school, because you've positioned yourself perfectly to say "I told you so" about the Aubameyang transfer if it doesn't work out, with some pretty compelling arguments that make a little bit of sense from a football perspective. But come on, I mean, don't take this away from us. We want to believe in this guy. We want to believe he's going to catch Harry Kane's goal totals in the next 2 years.
We can only imagine my issues, and I was thinking about this earlier today because I knew obviously one of the things we're going to be talking about is Aubameyang and the Mkhitaryan and whatnot. My issue has never and is never with Aubameyang coming in. It's with our current manager and the current system, and hopefully making sure that he can be plugged into it and we can adapt to him. Obviously, the way things worked out against Everton so far, the signs are good, but I'm just a realist, and I guess it's the coach in me that I have to look at the other side of the coin. And honestly, if you look at how poor Everton were, I think Yaya Sanogo would have had chances at goal that match as well. So
I mean, he's capable of putting 4 in. You've seen it.
Exactly.
So if he scores 20 goals between now and May, and 18 of them are offsides, is this a success, or is it
Listen, I'm not mad about the fact that he was offsides to get the goal. It doesn't matter to me at this point. It's not my fault. It's not your fault. It's not Andy's fault. It's no one's fault. If the ref can't make the proper call, listen, who's to blame? Yeah. But that sequence, despite it being offsides, is what you want from him. Exactly. And again, you do have to question if Mkhitaryan wasn't in the team that day, or if we didn't buy him at all, would some of the goals, period, that day happen? 2 of Ramsey's goals are directly attributed to Mkhitaryan getting into the spaces he did and playing the balls across goal. Without Mkhitaryan, which is why I thought he was man of the match. You don't think we score 5 that day? I don't think we score 5 that day, honestly.
And we will get to the match sure. For sure. But there's a segment that has been long lost on this podcast for a while, and I've gotten letters from all over the world, from all 7 continents, including Antarctica, asking for it back. It's back. It's the question of the week, Andy.
It is the question of the week, yes. And, I've mentioned before on this podcast, my cousin is a big Everton fan, and this weekend's match had a little extra spice, but he made a comment to me when they were 3 or 4-0 down. It kind of sat with me, and he and I were arguing, well, not arguing, but friendly conversation, and I wanted to bring it to you guys. And so, Drew, I'll go to Mike first, so you have a minute, because he sees the outline. So, my cousin Sam claims that Everton are on the same level as us, and by that he meant that because of our recent history in the league, we are no more likely than Everton to win the league, therefore we are at the same level. And so I kind of went back to him with, well, look at the FA Cups that we've won. The expectation of Arsenal is that we...
How are you even having this conversation with him?
Exactly.
That's a very good question to start.
So, obviously we have a debate, and he brings up some valid points. So I want to bring to you two, is that the perception of Arsenal now, and is that more accurate than what we think, or because we're blinded because we are supporters, or is my cousin just a ginger git that needs to shave his hair and beard, and then dye it so it's not ginger anymore.
Does he need to? Well,
and he
I
will
need
listen
to dye
to this,
it,
so call him a ginger as much as you'd like.
Well, yeah, but I'll call him a ginger, but I'm not going to call him a git because, we're the gits, and that's a term of endearment. I mean, to call him a git implies that your cousin is on the same level as you and me, and clearly he's not. This is the same cousin who always whines that you're spoiled by Arsenal and you don't understand. I'm going to do your voice. You don't understand what it's like to be the fan of a mid-table club. Well, there's still a mid-table club, and we're not. As much as it looked like we were heading that way, we're not. And they have no plan. They've proved that by paying $22 million or pounds for an offside coffee machine, who the best thing he can hope for this season is not to get eaten by his manager. So, I mean, he's having a laugh. That's bullshit. That's bullshit.
I like it. I just feel like you can ask one simple question. Would Aubameyang ever gone to Everton? The answer is no. Therefore, you're not on the level. I mean, that's a very simplistic view of it. I understand, but you just have to look at power in the transfer market, financial capabilities. Obviously, Everton are a well-supported club, but they're also a well-supported local club. They do have some worldwide fan base, obviously, particularly in the United States because of the expat population here. But Arsenal are a global brand. You think about all these factors, and you have to say that Arsenal, by and large, are a bigger club on every possible level. If you look at overall history, obviously Everton have a strong history, but their history, you have to look back quite a ways until you get back into you can get your hands into them being actually successful on the football pitch regularly. So for me, I don't think it's even up for debate. I mean, it's not that I don't respect Everton, because I do. I think as a football club, they're great. They have a fantastic ground. All the ex-professionals talk about.
Oh, they're adorable.
What's like to go play at Goodison Park? It's supposedly fantastic. All these things. It's great, but end of the day, Goodison Park isn't going to make them, a fantastic club. And what they've done 50 years ago, same thing. It's about now, and it's about moving forward. And obviously, Arsenal, if they want to be, can go nowhere but up. Instead of just straight across the board. And Everton they have a lot of work, as you said, Mike. They don't really have a plan. So. I
mean, they spent a lot of money. We had ridiculous preseason picks where I picked them to come in fourth, based on who they had bought over the summer and the ambition they were showing. But ambition doesn't equal chemistry. And
no, but you also have to look at who they bought. They bought 2 additional number 10s to the 2 number 10s they already had. That just shows that they didn't have a plan, and that just backs what you just said. You don't have, Wayne Rooney came in, David Klassen came in, they already had, Gylfi Sigurdsson came in, they already had Ross Barkley. That's just overloading in one position where you didn't need. That just showed that they didn't have a plan. It was just, we have all this money now. Yeah. It was like, someone wins the lottery, they go out and buy 16 boats. Well, why'd you need 16 boats? What did the other 15 do for you? It's that kind of thing. So.
Well, one comment that he made was that we're just Liverpool living in the past, and I said to him, for any supporter who says you don't know
that
what
we're
it's
Liverpool
like,
living in the past,
yeah,
that Arsenal is,
yeah, because of our previous glory, and so my argument is you build on your past. That's one thing that we give shit to Tottenham supporters, is because they always rile us for it, but at least we have one. And one thing I didn't say to him is, for a lot of people that don't know Arsenal, they hear how frustrated we are with Arsenal, but they don't know the changes that are being made behind the scenes. They don't know how little training our boys actually get, and so it's so easy for an outsider to look in on our club and to say, well, you don't know how hard you have it. Well, expectations are so different, and I said that to him. We start the season, every season, thinking we're going to finish top 2. You start the season hoping you'll sneak into a Europa spot, maybe make a run in the League Cup. It's different levels. And so we've shamed you. I love you.
Let's get into the match, because this conversation can only go down from here, but we can go back up if we talk about the match.
So lineups come out. Lacazette's on the bench. Awesome for his confidence. Are we going to call him Abba? Abba? How are we doing this?
How about Yang?
Okay. So Yang gets the start.
It would be Yang because he's a French speaker.
Yeah, that's true. Yang.
Do you have to say that with disgust?
So I can't remember.
Yes.
I can't remember at what point Drew messaged me saying, "I'm so mad, get me on your podcast," and that's obviously why he's here. So I'm going to shoot it right over to you, Drew. What are your thoughts on the lineup for the match?
It's not what I necessarily wanted, but it's almost what I expected, and that's only because you listen to the ABW special when they had Rafa Henningstein on, and then things that Phil Beauclair said before, and both of them sort of alluded to the fact that Wenger wasn't completely sold on Lacazette, but he did it because he was the cheaper option, and we couldn't really spunk up that much money for Oba in the summer, but we can now. And when you hear that, you just knew that he wasn't going to try and play them both. It was that he wants to use Oba as the main man, and Lacazette will be backup. And then you saw Giroud go, and then you just knew well, now we don't have many striker options, do we? It's either you use Lacazette as the backup or Danny Welbeck's the backup. And personally, I'm not happy that Lacazette's not starting, but I'd rather have Lacazette be the backup than Welbeck, of course. So I do think I would have preferred to start Lacazette just because, again, as you just said before, it is about confidence now because you do have to feel for the guy. He came in with expectations. He started well for us, honestly. At this point, he's still the leading scorer in the league for us. He's still top 10 in the league in goals, and yet now he's subjugated to being second choice on the bench. I don't know what goes through his head in that scenario, but apart from that, I thought it was pretty good, although I do think while he acquitted himself better than he has in recent past, I do think that Ainsley Maitland-Niles does deserve a chance in center midfield instead of Granit Xhaka, who, on the strength of it, for the duration of the season, hasn't been very good. I thought he was improved against Everton, but again, that probably wasn't that difficult because they were poor. But those are the two changes that I would have made if it was me. I would have started Maitland-Niles for Xhaka, and then I would have kept, like I said, at least in the 11, even if you didn't use him as center forward. You could play him on the right or the left side, or you could use him at center forward and have Aubameyang play right side and run off of him because of Lacazette's hold-up strength. So, but apart from that, I thought it was okay. It's just one of those things where I feel like players are still not being held accountable, and I think my anger that you alluded to, Andy, was more about the Xhaka thing. I just feel like he's been poor all year, yet he is never dropped from the team. Yet Lacazette was dropped, and he hasn't really even been that poor. Or I think that's where my frustration was coming in from.
Oh,
well, there's
absolutely.
Wenger guys and there's non-Wenger guys, right, Andy?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's Ramsey, there's Xhaka, there's Iwobi, and you know how big of a fan I am of Xhaka, Mike, and I completely agree with Drew. He needs to
the rest.
He does. Yeah. He needs to know that he isn't invincible. Here's my question, because you had mentioned the ABW pod. We hear on Arseblog, Ornstein kind of say that Lacazette, the idea of Lacazette was really driven by Arsene. So do you feel like that's PR? Do we feel like that is, actual truth? I mean, it just doesn't seem like an Arsene Wenger move to bring in two world-class strikers, breaking the transfer record twice over, to have one sit on the bench. So, Mike, I'll ask you, do you really think Lacazette was the cheaper option in the summer, or do you kind of vie with and believe Ornstein when he says, hey, this, Arsene wanted both, and now he's got both? I mean, what do we do here?
I tend, I could be completely wrong about this, but I tend to believe that he would have felt that Aubameyang was out of the price range and not gone for him, which is really what happened over the summer. Lacazette was the cheaper option, but something clearly isn't clicking between him and Arsene Wenger because he's being treated like the guy whose number he took over, like a slightly more must-play version of Lucas Perez. I'm not comparing the two as players. I'm comparing the way that Wenger has gone about, the personnel decisions, and there's just something going on there. But the landscape has changed with us adding the youngster within the past month. I mean, I used to be livid about Laka being marginalized for the likes of Welbeck and Walcott and Iwobi, and even when it came to being substituted, to keep that 1 foot out the door piece of shit Alexis in the lineup instead of Lacazette, who really wanted to be in. I was livid about that. I'm not as freaked out about him having to give up some playing time and fight for his spot with the likes of Aubameyang. And like Drew said, I mean, I'd like to see them all get out there. If Iwobi's still standing out there on the pitch from the start to the end of the game, or for any reasonable portion of it, there's minutes available for both of them to be on the pitch at the same time if they can figure out the formation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, we'll go into the match because we could just talk about that all day. Another thing Ornstein had said on Arseblog's podcast, and it kind of starts off with Mustafi. We tried to send him to West Brom in the summer to entice them to sell us Evans. Again, can't be great for Mustafi's confidence. Mike, why didn't we replace him in the summer? If he wasn't going to be wanted or needed by the club, we let Gabriel leave. He's not had a great season. Can't be good for his confidence. I kind of put this note in there because he started off the match almost giving away a one-on-one opportunity. But again, what's going on with that? I mean, you see such talent out of the guy, and then you just see some defensive frailties every once in a while.
I'm not ready to give up on him. I think he shows enough. I mean, he made the play of the game as far as I'm concerned in this game, which we'll get to as we go chronologically through the game.
I thought he was great in this match. I thought he was great.
I like him in there. I just think there's just issues with the partnership, with the change in formation from 3 to 4, 3 to 4, and he's just, I think he's still getting his feet at the club, even though this is in his second season. I'm not ready to give up on him yet. But, the reason that we ended up almost flipping him and then not and killing his confidence is because, in my opinion, Wenger was running things over the summer, whereas he wasn't as much in January. Mm. And when you do that with his Jedi mind tricks that he likes to pull on these people, I mean, it's going to kind of take the natural talent you have and minimize what you're going to get out of it because of the shit that he keeps pulling with these guys, with Lucas, with Lacazette to a certain extent, to Mustafi. And I mean, I'd rather Arsene just slaps and shoves them around like he does with coaches and referees than this mental bullshit, because it's fucking with their routine. And, I think Mustafi should be a staple in our back four. Can we do better? Should we be looking to improve that over the summer? Yes. But for now, I think you need to show him some love and let him get confident and play, because he is capable of doing really good things.
Absolutely. Drew, any thoughts on the Mustafi situation?
I mean, he was capped all throughout the German youth setup from U16 all the way to under 21s, and then for Germany, you don't get the faith from that youth system and from the national team if you're a bad player. It's simple as that. But I think for me, people have to understand that there's different types of defenders. Some defenders can micromanage on their own and see themselves out. Others need direction. And if you look at it, look who Mustafi has played next to. Say for Germany, he'll be next to Mats Hummels or Jerome Boateng, or he'll have Manuel Neuer as his keeper. And these are all players who are excellent communicators. They understand the game quite well, the ebb and flow of the match. They understand space. These are all things that they have a better understanding of. And it's we've seen already with Arsenal that communication at the back is poor throughout everybody. Koscielny isn't really that much of a vocal leader, right?
It's because no one's coaching him.
Exactly. There's that, and you have Petr Cech, who for years, I this might be a bit of a hot take, but I think he benefited quite a bit from playing for Chelsea, for having that vocal centre-back leader, and John Terry for the entire time that he was at Chelsea. I think that makes a gigantic difference when you're a keeper. He doesn't have that now. I think that he does communicate, but not as much as you would see from other keepers around the world, and I think that that's what it boils down to. A lot of these mistakes, people are saying, well, these are simple errors. These are professional footballers. Why are you making these mistakes? But I generally feel like if everyone's on the same page, communicating, if the roles are clearly defined and you know what's expected of you, these mistakes don't happen. Our defense is not nearly as well drilled as it used to be years ago, and I think that's clear to see. But I think there's different types of players now. You do, again, as you say, you have to coach them, you have to communicate with them on the pitch together, and then at London Colney during training, you have to pull people aside and just stop training every 5 minutes if you have to correct things. It can't just be about players working it out. And we've heard from many pundits and ex-players before that Arsene's a very not hands-on manager, where he wants his players to mature mentally on their own and work things out by themselves, both in training and in matches.
And he won't let anyone else take charge of it either.
Right. Exactly, and I think that's a gigantic problem. I think, and Mustafi's not really that old. He's only 25. He's not even in his prime playing. He's not even in his prime playing years for a center back yet. When he hits 27, 28, then you can maybe say, well, maybe now you probably shouldn't be making some of the errors that maybe you have been. But I just feel like I think he's better than people are not trying to suggest. I think when he first came in and you saw how well he played for us, I think. That speaks how good he is, but it also speaks to the fact that you see that trend in a lot of our players. How many players come here and start so brilliantly and then all of a sudden hit a brick wall and then just completely shut down? Kolasinac is another one, and we'll go into that another time maybe, but that's another player that you could have that same example of. Lacazette, same thing. I know he was starved for service, but you even look at him and his body language just looked like he was just something was off. You see that sometimes. So I still think I agree with Mike. He needs to be relied on as the first partner for Koscielny for the rest of the season, and then we'll reassess in the summer, before or after the World Cup, whichever it might be.
Absolutely. So let's get to the goals. 5 minutes. We're off to a hot start. Yang to Mikki. Ramsey.
I like that. I think we're going to be the only idiots that are calling him Yang.
Yeah. Ramsey with a rebound into the bottom of the net. At this point,
striker from Japan.
Yeah. All I could think about was it's on. We're winning the league because as I've been told, Everton are a world-class powerhouse, and I was so excited. Mike, was it too much for me to think that the run is on now?
Way too much, because after one goal I'm like, there's no way we've won the league after this goal. But if we score another one and we don't give up that 3-minute equalizer, then we've won the league. And so yeah, I mean, seriously, that goal was so crisp, so well worked, just tic-tac-toe stuff. But like I said, we've seen those situations before, not a whole lot recently, with us just taking it to the other team so early in the game, like we did against Palace and like we did against Everton. And then 3 minutes later, we're pulling the ball out of the back of our net. So, we weren't S-ing our D's quite yet at that point, but, I was hoping to see more, and see more we did. See more butts. We did.
Seriously. So, next goal, 13th minute. We're pulling a Palace here. Ozil's corner is going near post. Mustafi with a flick on. Koscielny with a diving header to make it 2-0. Drew, I thought it was a bit selfish of Koscielny to have scored this goal, considering we just signed a world-class player who was waiting to tap it in at the back. Seriously. I mean, what are your thoughts on Koscielny just being an asshole and for not letting our new striker score a goal? Absolutely ridiculous.
Well, he is French, so
true.
I think that would sum it up. But I mean, it's nice to see him get a goal. Maybe he'll actually put 3 words together during the celebration. Not really quite sure. But it was nice to be, it's not familiar territory for us to be 2-0 up inside 15 minutes. And flying
free kicks every 5 seconds.
Yeah. And then looking to going and getting a third, that's vintage. It's almost vintage stuff from us from 10 years ago. But it was nice to see.
The body language from Aubameyang when
I saw that
his arms go flat out in what looks like what the fuck are you doing? And then he realizes I'm just going to turn this into a celebration because I don't want to be that guy yet.
Yeah, I did see that.
It looked for a second like he was like, why did you just steal that from me?
I mean, strikers are selfish. You have to be. So and apparently so are center backs. So
French ones anyway.
So it just. I just think we need to look at the leadership on this team and strip him of the armband immediately after that mistake and give it to Jack.
Mistake. Yeah, well, Jack has to play in order to get the armband, but.
So 14th minute, nothing really happens except Fat Sam was on camera wet and he's still very fat.
It's an important update.
Just wanted to point that out.
By the way, about Fat Sam, over the weekend we had this big ceremony where my son Jake tore down his Alexis Sanchez fathead, which is, if you're not familiar with what a fathead is, it's like a big wall sticker that doesn't tear up all the paint, presumably. And he's had it up there pretty much since about, whatever the Hanukkah after we signed Alexis Sanchez was. And so we did a big ceremony, took video of it, and we're looking for the next one to go up there. I'm shopping online. I'm not sure I really want to get a player because it always goes badly. And would you believe they have a Sam Allardyce fathead And it's triple the cost of all the other ones because there's so much more material involved. It's ridiculous. And we have to move into a new house to fit it on the wall. So we're going to skip that. But yeah, he's enormous. And that's coming from me. So who, by the way, Robbie from Arsenal Fan TV posts a video of us doing the podcast and calls me Big Mike. So when he calls you Big Mike, it's time to go on a diet.
Don't be too hard on yourself.
Thank you.
Whatever happened to your Baconator diet where you just removed the bun and thought everything else was healthy for you?
Well, it was a calculated, carbohydrate type of situation. And then I went to Europe and it's impossible to get a Baconator or to avoid carbs. And, strange thing is I just haven't figured it back out again. So yeah, I'm on my way to being fat Mike Allardyce.
So we go to the 18th minute. Our forward movement was super fluid. Iwobi with a very positive, unselfish pass to Ramsey. I say that because if I were Iwobi, I would have taken that shot. Ramsey gets awful lucky, deflects off of Mangala. It's 3-0. Drew, I know you're a coach. For me, I thought Pickford could have done a lot more to have saved that. Maybe he caught it last minute in the air, but I felt like he could have gotten more of a hand on tip that over. It's great to see Ramsey back in the lineup. Is he what we're missing at this point? And so 2 questions there. What are your thoughts on Ramsey being back, fit, scoring goals, and could Pickford have done more with that goal?
I think any chance you get to add goals to your team from midfield, you want that option. And I think Ramsey does bring that to us. With the way that presumably our fluidity going forward is going to continue to progress, that's going to create a lot of space for Ramsey to make those late runs that he has built a large part of his career over. And to his credit, he's excellent at those. The way he reads the play, the way he picks the right spot to run into, the way, he's so good at that. And I think that's something we have missed because for all his good qualities, I do think Ramsey has quite a few more goals than Jack Wilshere does, obviously. And, Jack, might score a worldie by accident or intentionally, but other than that, we don't have a lot of goals in our central midfield, and Mesut Ozil's never going to be a big goal scorer either. He never was for the entirety of his career. I think the most goals he ever had in the league season was 9. I think he did that twice. I think both times it was with Real Madrid, actually. So no, I do think that Wilshere still deserves chances in the team because I thought he played quite well up to this point. But I think bringing Ramsey back into the team, into the fold, does give us another threat in the final third that gives a lot of teams more moments of pause. I think it's important.
And he's going to find that huge open patch of space that he had for that shot a lot now with the offensive firepower around him. I mean, those areas just weren't open to spot someone to take a one-time shot before. And I think he's going to find a lot of that space all day long in the next couple of months if he can stay healthy.
But I agree with that. And then I think that's one of the things that a lot of us were talking about with Mkhitaryan is because he can't pick the ball up and run at you and be direct. When you do that, you do drag defenders to one of the flanks you run into, and that inevitably will create space. Ozil already creates space with the runs he makes. Aubameyang, because of his pace and behind, defenders do have to step off of him and not hug him too tight because he'll just blow by them off the shoulder. And again, that will create space for Ramsey. I do think that's incredibly important. It does give us another potential ace in the hole.
And maybe some of our opponents will have 4 guys surrounding one guy like 4 feet from the sideline like we did on some of the goals that we've given up. We'll start seeing that go the other way.
One can only hope. In regards to Pickford, I genuinely think that that slight deflection did get the best of him. When you strike a ball that hard and it deflects that quickly, sometimes you just can't get back. But I do think he was leaning too far to his right when it happened. I think his positioning was a little off, but I still think that deflection might have given an issue. It's like if you watch hockey, for example, when you bat the puck down, sometimes it's very hard for the goalie to make up that ground that he would have, not have to make up if it wasn't deflected. So
don't get Andy started talking about hockey because we spend the whole rest of the pod talking.
I love hockey, but we can talk about how bad the Avs are at another time. So
drunky team. Yeah, I thought he was wrong-footed, but I mean, you get wrong-footed more easily if you're leaning too much in the wrong direction. Well, so I'll leave it up to the real footballers on the podcast.
Well, and the biggest downside for Ramsey being back in the team and playing as well as he is it it leaves us very vulnerable behind him because Xhaka, as we all know, is not defensively minded. And so Ramsey has a tendency to not track back and not cover space, as we see with the likes of a Jack or maybe an El Nini. And so because Xhaka is getting that instant start every game, we are going to be susceptible if Ramsey doesn't get on his horse to track back. And so that's my only nerve with Ramsey is
and who does that scream for to go into that spot that Xhaka's in right now?
Well, and I know
Drew's already said it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I know I say that on the cusp of Ramsey making a beautiful, beautiful challenge during the week and getting back, but that's every once in a while, and we need that way more.
Speaking of beautiful challenges, can I just mention the one non-goal highlight for me? I know we scored 5 goals. I know it was an amazing offensive performance, delightful to see our new players all meshing together. But I got to give a shout out to the aforementioned Mustafi, because this was my favorite play, possibly of the entire season. In the 29th minute, Theo finds his way through a seam in the defense that probably shouldn't have happened in the first place, so I'm overlooking that. But Nacho closes him down to at least make him take an extra touch and go sideways. And from 20 yards away, out of nowhere, Mustafi just finds another gear and lunges in at the last second to deflect the shot wide and over. Now, a couple things about this. First of all, the shot, if it had been gotten off clearly, probably would have either gone directly at Czech or 10 feet wide of the post. So I wasn't really worried to begin with per se, but you can never be too sure. And the last thing I wanted to see was Theo Walcott scoring and doing the whole, slow walk, head down, I'm not going to celebrate thing while his teammates are all jumping on him. Man of the match, man of the season is Mustafi just for that play, because I wasn't looking for a happy ending, for Theo or from Theo.
No. And the thing with Theo is, I think it was either that or another. He did typical Theo. He receives the ball after a perfect run behind our defenders, and he runs wide with it. And I've never understood why the guy can't go at goal. I don't know if it's for his first touch, or if he just smells coffee somewhere and he heads to that. I don't get it. But good luck, Theo.
Yeah.
36th minute.
I do wish him good luck. And when he came out of the game with 30 minutes left, I gave him I gave him a clap.
He deserved it. He did.
Yeah, I mean, we joke around about him a lot, and it's not all jokes, but, at this point, now that this game is behind us, I wish him nothing but the best.
No. Right. Sentiment done.
Good luck, fans of Everton, getting his autograph.
36th minute. Mike, we see a beautiful through ball. There's 2 things you can associate with Mkhitaryan, okay? First, not knowing how to spell his last name, and second, offside goals. Because at United, I think every goal he ever scored for them was offside. And God knows how the referee got this wrong. But Yang was about 6 yards behind the defender. And at the end of the day, it's a beautiful through ball. He's miles offside. It's a superb finish. I think even he knew he was offside, so that kind of even made the finish a little bit better. But debut goal...
Was he more offside than Silva for Manchester City against us? I mean, it's getting close for like the most offside goal of the season.
He was pretty bad.
It was like another of him behind him, and then
it was worse than the Alexis one against West Ham a season or two ago, where that was like our 4th or 5th of the game, and it was a beautiful fucking goal that he scored, except he was 4 yards offsides when he got the ball. But at least that one didn't it didn't cost anyone the game or anything like that. The ref whiners who have the anti-Arsenal agenda narrative, I should say, who think that the refs have the anti-Arsenal agenda, will forget this one very quickly all of a sudden. But, it just shows us how cool Aubameyang is. The youngster is just a cool cucumber in those situations. I do recall him having a breakaway earlier in the game that he didn't finish. I think the keeper, Pickford, made a good stop on it, cut off the angle. And I thought he might have been able to chip the keeper, which is apparently, that's his thing, to chip the keeper perfectly. So it was nice for him to break his Arsenal duck with that goal. And, Mkhitaryan as a playmaker, we've got potentially Ozil and Ozil Jr. in the squad at the same time. And I think they're going to love playing with each other. on the pitch.
Yeah.
What they do in their private life is their business. But.
Well, and that's and that's kind of the rub when we go back to Lacazette, when you have those two just absolute dynamite number 10s, to be able to put, I'd even throw Lacazette in the Iwobi role and just say, just play, just find space. Those two guys will find you.
Put this talent on the pitch and
exactly.
give them a little while to gel, and it can happen. I mean, Drew, is champagne football on the horizon? Is it coming? God damn it!
I'd like for it to, but I think the
coach is still Arsene Wenger.
Yes, I think we won't see the best of it until a new manager comes in. That said, because again, I think Wenger just has this philosophy that you just let players go out and play and they'll figure it out. Sometimes you can't, sometimes they can do that, but they can have that power in a predetermined system and an approach, and then they have a little bit of, leeway. You can call outside the ladders a little bit, but I think you still need some sort of footballing doctrine, if you will. I think we are lacking that.
Yeah, I do think that kind of the lax style might benefit Mkhitaryan most quickly and immediately. The fact that he really isn't being put into a box as to what he has to do, because he's been so used to that, killing his confidence. So that might be perfect for him. Whereas for the rest of them, it could be limiting.
Well, the thing is, he was, but he wasn't in a box at Dortmund.
I'm not talking about at Dortmund. I'm talking about
I know you were about United, but that's a different box altogether. That's very constrainful. It's just you can't do anything box. At Dortmund, Tuchel had his system, and then there was certain degrees that you can go and stray away from it, but you still had that base thought process of how we need to play attacking football, and after that, then you can still be creative and again call outside lines a little bit inside that system. I don't think we have that yet, but I think maybe for right now we don't necessarily need it, because again, this isn't a year where we're going to go and challenge for the title. I think I forget who said it, but right now, from January up until the summer, this needs to be considered almost like an extended preseason. Let the players play, let them get used to each other, let us work out some attacking kinks, because the title, bar some sort of catastrophic, nosedive by City, they're going to go on and win a title. I don't think we're going to win Europa League either, honestly.
I'm sure I'm not the person you're referring to, but I did kind of say to an extent on Wednesday's podcast, I'm like, let's not be so, we have two players that I never thought we'd be able to get over the summer, and they're here whether we're in Champions League or not next season. We got the potential now. We're already talking about the likes of Oblak, Timo Werner. We're already talking about the improvements we're going to make. Let's not stress out so much about having to come in third and win both Europa and the other thing. Let's just let these guys play so that they hit the ground running in August.
Exactly. And I think the goal and the aim should be focusing on next season. Again, sometimes it's almost like, understanding that you in another sport that you're not going to go on and win, say the Stanley Cup, is just so you blow up the roster and say, just go out and play the kids, let them develop for half a season, and then we target next year, the year after that. That's kind of has to be, I think, the way we need to approach this season. Let's go out, let them play, let them gel. Mkhitaryan and Aubameyang don't need that, but they do have to gel with the players around them. Let's figure out where we do need to strengthen this side. And I think everyone is probably unanimous in saying we need one or two extra additions on top of keeping everybody here. But it's got to be about next season. This season is whatever we end up winning in the end will be a bonus. The highest place we can finish possible would be great, but I think it's all about next season. I think, obviously you guys agree, so.
Yeah, no, you can't not disagree with that. And I think a couple defensive.
No, you can't disagree with that. You cannot disagree. There's a double negative.
Yeah, well, we got to go to the fact that here's the double negative. Petr Cech can't fucking get his 200th clean sheet because we can't defend for shit. Everton score in the 64th minute, consolation goal. Basically a cross ball where Kolasinac is marking two men. He doesn't jump. Koscielny's lost in no man's land. Literally, it's like when we let a goal in, it's the most shambolic of defending. Very rarely do you see a goal go in. I don't know if you guys watched the match today, but when Hazard scored against Watford, you're like, no, fair play. That's on an unsavable goal. We can literally stop these from going in defensively, and we don't. Drew,
yeah.
Walk me through your thoughts here. as a coach, if I see this happen, the first thing I'm doing is just riling at my players. Like, why aren't you leaving the ground and challenging for a ball?
But this also goes back to the communication thing, and there's multiple points. First of all, again, for some of his experiences he is, Koscielny's got to do better. And people can't just throw all the blame on Kolasinac in this situation.
No, they cannot.
Granted, he should have at least made some sort of attempt at leaping for the ball. I will say that. But again, Koscielny's caught no man's land, as you say. Calvert-Lewin, who scored the goal, he came from behind Kolasinac, so he didn't even know he was coming. So that exactly clown car defending. It's one of those things where it should have been on. At that time, it was Czech at the time, so it should have been on Czech or anybody else under the midfielders who spotted the run to let Kolasinac know that someone was behind him unmarked. Like these are again when we, as you say, when we give up goals like this, it just makes you wonder like what the hell is going on.
You can say fuck.
Like, I try to be,
He's not married, but he's family friendly. So when he gets married, he's going to start throwing F-bombs all over the place.
It's just like, if this was, if
I saw what you called Skype earlier tonight, so, you're not going to play that game with us, Drew.
If this was the team that I coached, I would have been livid at the multiple mistakes. And again, it's not just on Kolasinac. It's the keeper plays a role here. Kolasinac is at fault. Koscielny is at fault. Other players who are away from the play, not communicating, letting them know that, there's a man unmarked running at the back post. These are all things. So there's 3 or 4 mistakes here and a goal that really probably shouldn't have happened. And it's a shame that he didn't get his 200th clean sheet because of it. But again, you just have to hope that we can iron these things out. Again, let's iron them out for the rest of the season. And hopefully mistakes like this will stop happening because they've been happening for the better part of the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So,
well, hopefully, like you said, get some new coaches in. Last goal that goes in is Ramsey's hat trick. It was a shame because you see the board go up, and I know the commentators over here just said, if I'm Ramsey, I'm just running forward, screaming for the ball. It only stays in because an Everton player tries to save a throw. Mikki sees Ramsey on top of the box, smashes it home, 5-1. Excellent stuff. I'm happy to see Ramsey back. I'm happy to see him scoring goals. But for me, Mike, we always like to do this at the end of the match when we go to the man of the match. He's not mine. I thought Mkhitaryan was my man of the match for the fact that he got the 3 assists, but I thought defensively, in the beginning of the game, he was outstanding. He was tracking back, closing players down, and he was helping us defensively dictate the game. And so he was my man of the match. Mike, who was yours?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Mkhitaryan as well. I mean, he looks like a man trying to prove a point, and you want that in your team as long as it's not to the detriment of the team concept. But his point is that he can be a facilitator, and he was an amazing facilitator on Saturday. I mean, Ramsey, happy for him, and frankly, I think from here on out, if he can stay healthy, he might be the surprise biggest beneficiary of this January transfer window for reasons I said before. I mean, the amount of open space he's going to get. If we can sort out the defense and at least get someone minding the area behind him, whether that's Xhaka, being coached to do something different, or whether it's Maitland-Niles coming in, which I don't think we're going to see this season, unfortunately. I think they'll keep putting him at the defensive positions and only if someone gets hurt. But Mkhitaryan was just, unbelievable. He can pick guys out. He can draw defenders out, like we said, and create that kind of space for guys like Ramsey to finish off. He gets a 9.9 Opta score, which I haven't seen before. I know that there's been 10s, but 9.9 for Mkhitaryan to a 9.7 for Ramsey. I'll take that any day of the week.
Absolutely.
But,
Drew, who was your man of the match?
It's Mkhitaryan, of course. Again, I just feel like the way he created those spaces, those types of balls that he served to Ramsey are passes you didn't normally see from any Arsenal player this season. Even Mesut Ozil, he's not really known for that kind of service. Mkhitaryan, again, that was something he did routinely at Dortmund, not just for Aubameyang, but for Marco Reus and people like that. That's just
Mesut sees stuff that's not there, whereas Mkhitaryan might be very good at making the perfect pass that is there, but that isn't necessarily always made perfectly.
Right, exactly. And if, again, as you say, I think the midfielders are going to benefit from that. You might even see a few more goals from Jack Wilshere because of it, because Wilshere also does make late runs, and he does like to play some good combination play, and Mkhitaryan can do that. So can Ozil and so can Aubameyang. So I think a lot of players are going to. For me, I think the Mkhitaryan signing is more important than the Aubameyang signing. That's not because I have my reservations about Aubameyang fitting in. I just feel like taking away some of the creative onus from Ozil and giving us another creative outlet and giving us a different type of player who is more efficient at going forward and being direct, where it's not, Alexis, as good as he was for us and the goals that he did bring, sometimes he would go forward and he would just stop and just stand there and then run backwards 25, 30 yards for no reason at all. Mkhitaryan, even if he doesn't beat the player, he would at least try to beat the player. It's almost like he's hardwired to just go direct as much as possible, and that's something that we need and we've been missing for forever.
I got a stat for your asses. Assists for Arsenal. Alexis 3 for the season so far, and I don't think he's going to add to that. Mkhitaryan 3 for the season so far. Now, I know they're not the same player and they're not asked to do the same thing, but yeah, I mean, come on now.
I also have a stat for you too, Mike. In the first 5 minutes of Mkhitaryan's Arsenal career, he completed more passes than Iwobi's entire career.
4,612 passes. Or maybe it's just 12 passes.
I think there's exciting times afoot, because if you look at Mesut, if you look at Mkhitaryan, to have both of those players on one field, if they're both healthy and they're both on the pitch, it's a nightmare, because not every team has two Contes who can close both of those down. You have to choose one. It's very dangerous when you mark one and you leave the other open. And so we are very lucky, and I think that we're heading in this really fun direction. If we could just get that better defending, we're very much on rank and on track to do something special.
We're in the ascendancy.
So that's the match. May it long continue. We've got a big one this weekend. We could have egg on our face, but
I don't know. I'm feeling kind of good about it. I mean, cautiously, reservedly, because obviously,
if there's one thing we like to do at Wembley,
you're going to get the post-match suspensions from Dele Alli and from Kane for diving. So.
Oh yeah, right.
But you won't, because Spurs are the Premier League darling, so that nothing's going to come down from upon high again. So, to be honest,
no, the FA's a joke.
Yeah.
It is. So a couple general talking points I want to whip through, because we do have a lot of good user questions. People came out of not the woodwork, but a lot of questions for Drew tonight. So first of all, what do you make, and this isn't a user question, this is from me, what do you make of these constant rumors of a certain Joachim Löw being lined up to replace Wenger whenever the time comes? I could already tell you're making the sound that he makes when he sticks his fingers out. The 3 questions. Do you think there's anything to the rumors? If there is something to the rumors, would he be a reasonable heir apparent? And I'm hearing the tone of your voice. And 3, how many miles would you need to be away from his fingers to be comfortable with the smell?
I think there will be something with the rumors. Whether we will materialize is different, but he's done with Germany after the World Cup. But he's still relatively young. I think he's in his early to mid 50s, so he's got another 10 years in him to manage minimum. Obviously, Wenger's on his last legs, whether if he leaves at the end of this season or at the end of last season, no one knows. But I think this will be his last contract, if I'm honest. So I think there could be something in the rumors. Do I want him as coach? No. Listen, he's done great things with Germany, but there's a few things people have to consider. The German national program is hardwired to make sure that the German national team is supplied with fantastic players consistently. It's a conveyor belt of players. And your job is made easier when you have those players available for you. Also, he's not managed at club level in over a decade.
Who did he manage before he took over the national team?
He started at Stuttgart. It was his first big appointment, and he won the German Cup, I do believe, with them.
Pokal?
Yeah, the DFB Pokal. But he did not do well managerially after that. He went to, I'm pretty sure he went to Fenerbahce in Turkey, and I think he was halfway decent. He was he went to the Austrian Bundesliga for a little bit, but his managerial record is incredibly questionable, and he's never really managed a big side. And again, I just feel for me, it's easier to go out and have expectations and win matches when the system is tailored to make sure you have the highest percentage chance possible of winning matches. And obviously Arsenal are at that point right now. So yeah, no, I personally wouldn't want it. I'd want someone who's more in tune with club football. I think there are managers out there who I would have if we had a chance.
Who's your man? Or woman? I don't want to be, I don't want to be that guy.
I think it depends on what you're looking for. If you really if you want some sort of to sort of tie in Wenger's legacy, then you want someone who he has had maybe, or some tie to him. So I would go after maybe a Giovanni van Bronckhorst. I do rate him, from his time at Feyenoord, but you could also say that like a Julian Nagelsmann would be interesting because he's a very 21st century manager. He's very up on sports science and different managerial approaches and moving things forward. And he's young and ambitious. He's charismatic. He has a different way of thinking. He promotes playing young players if they're good enough, and that's not something we have had enough, but we do have younger players coming through now who could make the grade if they're managed properly. And that's something that he tries to strive for, because obviously Hoffenheim aren't blessed with a ton of funds, more so than maybe smaller clubs in Germany, but they can't really compete with bigger ones. So
30 years old too.
Yeah, he's quite young. I think that might be a little too young, but
he'd be younger than half the team.
Yeah, but I think it's just, do you want to continue Wenger's legacy, or do you want someone to come in and build their own? I think and that once you figure that out, then you can figure out maybe who you want to go for. I also wouldn't be surprised if Patrick Vieira is in the running. Yeah, I could see someone like a Patrick Vieira and a Mikel Arteta combination, or a Patrick Vieira and a Dennis Bergkamp, because obviously Bergkamp doesn't fly, but you don't have to fly to be assistant manager. So you could see maybe something like that as well. It really depends on what you want. So.
Hey guys, tomorrow Antonio Conte is probably going to be without a job, and
he's getting sacked in the morning.
Will
you want him?
I would take him.
Really?
Yeah, I would. I think that I would, and here's why.
He's not French, Drew. What's your problem?
Here's why. Hearing Vieira, hearing Van Bronckhorst, hearing Arteta is great. But I want a manager who can come in and take this team to the next level, who's been there, done that. And I feel like Conte, he's won the Premier League, great. But he's also done it, and he's been at the highest level. He's done Italy, he's done Juventus, he's done smaller clubs in Italy and helped them do well. And so I prefer to have a manager that could come in and make an impact right away. Does that mean I don't want a Vieira? I absolutely do, but I want to see him in Europe. I want to see him coach in the Champions League. I want to see him go to a smaller team and kind of build his way up. I think Arteta being under Pep's tutelage is the best thing, but he's only had that for, 2 seasons? He needs more time. So I would prefer, the only name in there that I love is the Bergkamp one, because he's been at Ajax, or was at Ajax, and he's seen and done every different league. But Conte, for me, just, if he's available, what other real manager out there can we really get? I mean...
Goose hitting. he's
he'll be at Chelsea.
Manager.
He'll be at Chelsea. Yeah. But no, I mean, do you guys? What are your? I mean, obviously that's my viewpoint. It sounds like the two of you wouldn't be on board with that.
I'd want to know what's going on at Chelsea. That a guy. I mean, the rise and falls of managers at Chelsea.
It's the owner, Mike.
It's spectacular, though. I mean, like Conte, you would have thought. I mean, Mourinho, I get it, but everybody with Chelsea. So yeah, the one constant in their case is the owner.
You can win the Champions League and get fired from your job because you don't have the name.
But you get pretty much whatever support you ask for when it comes to personnel and player.
I think that's where the problem with Conte is, that he wanted to go into the transfer market for certain players and that wasn't approved on. And maybe when he tried to sign Oxlade-Chamberlain, they lost all faith in his judgment. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot going on at Chelsea and their roller coaster, and at some point they're going to start rehiring. Oh wait, they've already done that. We've seen them do that already. They're just going through so many coaches. They're just going to rehire them all at some point.
There are 0 coaches left in world football that haven't coached at Chelsea at some point.
But hey, let's not.
Other than Arsene Wenger.
You know, we mentioned hiring a 30-year-old. Kroenke's done it before.
Yeah.
He could do it again.
Different sport. All right, so the one other thing I want to talk about before the questions is the massive pregame protest this week in North London against Kroenke, Wenger, and the board. Now, first of all, I said last year when the protests were going on, which was right around the time I was over there, there was no problem with the protests. Things were really kind of going to shit. There was a big battle. People were annoyed by them. I stood up for the right of people to protest, as long as it was being done constructively, and I still do. But I mean, timing, folks. I mean, this go around was planned directly after a January transfer window where, I've seen the fact that if you add up all of our purchases and subtract out all the sales, we might even still be in profit territory. I get that. But I mean, for a January transfer window to go like it did is unprecedented. And I think it shows the new direction of the team is starting to creep in with Raul and Sven. We rid ourselves of the majority of the dead weight. Yes, the staples that everyone's concerned about, Wenger, fucking Sir Chips and his cronies, and Kroenke, those are all still there. And ultimately, we could be sitting here in March or April saying, we took all this good momentum and flush it down the toilet by not making the rest of the changes. But I just think that, the timing of complaining that change isn't happening fast enough for you, when change does finally seem to be maybe happening, it's just, it makes you look like like just someone who would rather complain than be happy, instead of just complaining about something that is worth complaining about. So, we have a very good friend of ours who who was one of the 10 people I think that was there. And he went there to show his face, to show his support, because he's been very vocal, and I got a lot of respect for him for doing that. And I talked with him on WhatsApp, and I said, it's just the wrong time. It doesn't seem constructive to be that negative and angry at a time where we really, the team finally seems to have figured it out from a communal standpoint, and they seem to be playing for each other. Let's have the supporters try to do the same for the next 4 months, and we can just fucking go and have civil war if we need to at the end of the season. But it was just, it never even got off the ground. I don't think that they paraded at all, because there were literally less than a dozen people, I think, that were there from what I heard. Any thoughts, Drew? Would you have been with the pitchforks and the fire?
No, I don't think so. I feel like you just mentioned that change takes time. I think so many fans just want us to fire a tomahawk cruise missile through the window at Kroenke's office and blow the whole thing up, and then be forced to replace everybody in one fell swoop. I don't think it works that way. Obviously, it doesn't. The fact that he just bought more shares, people have to understand what Arsenal means to his financial portfolio and what it allows him to do things in the American sports landscape. He's never letting go of Arsenal, honestly, unless someone comes in with a $20 billion offer or whatever. We're stuck with him. So fine. So you erase that. But you have to understand, Wenger will be on the way out. People have to, that takes time, getting new board members in, that takes time. That backroom
approximately change. 30 years to get Arsene Wenger out.
Fair. The backroom changes that people have wanted are now happening, and give that time, see what fruits that can bear. It's already played a big role in us getting Aubameyang and us getting Mkhitaryan in the swap deal. But again, I think sports fans in general in this day and age just want things to happen overnight, and I don't think that's just not realistic.
Well, and I think the concern, which is a realistic concern, is that if you don't stay consistent with your message of change and change now, if you start to back down, then they're gonna somehow get comfortable with the fact that they've pacified the fans. They haven't changed the things that are ultimately to blame for the situation in the first place. For most people, that's Wenger. and that they're basically winning in the sense that they're squashing the revolution with papering over the cracks.
But
we don't
know that though.
We don't know that yet. No, I mean we've been here before when it comes to good, we signed a new player and everything's going to change now, and the things that Gazeta said about change, but it's different that we've hired these two guys. And they seem to have changed the outward facing mentality of Arsenal and the transfer market from being the world's joke to being someone that you have to actually negotiate with, to avoid losing your leverage. So give it a chance.
Well, let's talk about that though for a minute. But I think that there's so much fan angst and expectation, and they just want to take everything away. And almost to the point of discrediting Arsene Wenger to just, to almost trying to shove him out the door, that they're also now having these opinions and making these claims that aren't actually true. People were literally going out and saying that Sven Mislintat, who is the head scout, and that he was the one going out and making deals. That's not how that works at all. And I think that's when you see things like that happen, then you have to understand, okay, you got to bring it back a notch. Like backroom changes just happened. We had a fantastic January where things were addressed. We lost a star player. We brought in two excellent players into the club. Backroom changes happened. Now you have to see, well, what happens to the rest of the season? Did we push on and were things improved, at least on the pitch and footballing terms for the rest of the season? Were they or were they not? And then you reassess that in the summer. Again, I think people are angry about is that they feel like if we start to play well again, that's going to give Wenger an excuse to sign another extension. I think that's what I'm saying. I think that's where the angst comes from. And I understand that, but there's no guarantee that will happen. For all we know, he could be done at the end of this season. We don't know that yet. Again, I think if it comes out that he comes out, for argument's sake, he comes out in the summer and said, things went so well this season, I'm going to sign on for another 2 years. At that point, then I could understand why people would be that angry, and I would probably be that angry as well, because eventually it is time to move on from something, and that's not even to be disrespectful at all. It's just change is inevitable, and it's a matter of putting yourself in a good position to when the change should happen. And I think we're potentially coming on to that point as a club where this is a good time for that change, whether it be this summer or the next summer. I think those are the 2 summers where you look to start to roll the ball on other things, and Wenger stepping down or stepping up, as it were, because he'll probably go up to the board. That change should happen. I agree with that, but constant protests don't happen either, and sometimes it does make things more divisive than it needs to be. Voice your opinion, do what you need to do, but timing, as you say, I think is critical for something like a protest. I think that's why the protest failed, because the timing was awful.
Now, Andy, you would have been standing outside Highbury with the ski mask on and the signs and the stuff, right? I mean, you love you love yourself a good protest, right? You've been outspoken against them, yeah.
Such a waste of time. Here's the deal. As Drew said, someone could come in with £4 billion and he's not going to sell the club. And until people stop showing up at the stadium, nothing is going to happen. And unfortunately, we live in a world where there has to be a problem. There has to be something to complain about, and we live in a world, like Drew said, where one person makes up one bullshit, idiotic lie, and everyone bandwagons on that, and that's the truth. And you can't overcome the masses with, that's not accurate. They don't want to listen. There has to be drama. There has to be problem. And that's the world we live in now. Everyone's out to headhunt each other. And unfortunately, that, us being the fan base we are with this massive social media presence, we have to put up with it. But, freedom of speech is great, but walking down the street with a fucking banner, what does that do? It doesn't do anything.
It does something if you have, 500 or 1,000 people.
I was going to say, if you have the masses. But here's the thing, Mike. A lot of people fail to recognize that Kroenke probably doesn't even know who we played this weekend. So he doesn't know there's a fucking parade. He doesn't know that there's a fucking march on in slanting his name. That's where people need to identify the problem with this club, is you have an owner who doesn't give a shit. He cares about the balance of his bank. And until that goes into red, nothing changes. But we've talked about that before,
Yeah, and I think we have not everybody, because I mean I know that everybody has a legitimate concern. It's not all about fake, but I mean a lot of the guy who organizes these protests, I gotta say, is just a complete cunt. And I'm not gonna name him and shame him, but I mean I've interacted with him. You're not an effective leader. You can't round together more than 12 people. And, maybe if you weren't such a cunt, people might get behind your cause, but you're the bigger problem there. So,
well, you
anyway.
gotta read the room, right? Like you said, doing it after this big January window is not the time to do it. No,
we don't want to just go away because, everyone's so excited about one new transfer and
but you make yourself look like an idiot. And
right.
Here's the deal, Mike. I guarantee, right? We lose on Saturday. Within 72 hours of us losing to Tottenham, if it happens, Jack Wilshere will have signed a new contract.
Probably.
The PR team is on point this year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's because they're taking it out of Arsene Wenger's hand.
Yep.
Not that he was ever doing the PR, but all right. Some user questions from Alfredo in New Orleans, who I had the pleasure of spending some time with recently at Gunagrad. Drew, why do you think players like Xhaka and Kolasinac, giving you an opportunity to finish your thought from before, who excelled in the Bundesliga, are having such a hard time in the Premier League? Are they being asked to do something different than they did at Gladbach and Schalke?
There's two different situations for two different players. I think Xhaka was a little bit overrated at Gladbach. I think what he did well, you saw more of, that being his range of passing. He was very good at pressing high up and winning back possession in the opposition half. You saw that more because that was the system Gladbach played. But they were still just as exposed centrally when he didn't have the ball. He still didn't track back very, very well.
Did he benefit from playing with Dahoud also?
A little bit. They had a good partnership, but it was a good partnership on one half of the pitch. Defensively, Gladbach were still at 6s and 7s. I think the season before we got Xhaka, they gave up 50 goals in the Bundesliga, even though they finished 4th. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that the back four was ruthlessly exposed constantly, and also because Gladbach used wing backs a lot to get up. So
familiar.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't get that midfield support, and I think his strengths overshadowed his weaknesses. Also because Pep famously gave him some praise once, and everyone jumped on saying, "Oh, Xhaka's world class. Pep rates him." Blah blah blah. And then that's how fans take off with that kind of thing. But you have to look at him though. When he plays for Switzerland, he's in a 3-man midfield, and he's not the deepest midfielder. He's not the defensive midfielder in that. That's usually Valon Barami or Dennis Zakaria. So Xhaka's freed of most of his defensive responsibilities for Switzerland in the midfield that they have very strict instructions. They're very coordinated. There's a rigid system they employ, and it works for them. And he works in that because he's been given things. Here are your goals. Here's what your tasks are. And again, as we've talked about before, we don't see that in a lot of Arsenal players to get from Arsene Wenger. So they struggle in that regard. And what Rafa Hernick then said about Xhaka with how he was managed by Lucien Favre at Gladbach was pretty telling. How about Favre had to always stop training to point Xhaka where he needed to go, what he needed to do, what he needed to improve. And that's why he was at least a little bit better there. We won't get that from him until we have a different manager, unfortunately. That's just kind of how it is. In regards to Kolasinac, he's just, I feel like he started quite well. You saw how well he played in the Community Shield. Everyone was bigging him up. He was brilliant that day.
I certainly was.
Yeah, me as well.
I got his name on the back of my kit. I called him the Ballon d'Or winner. I had no idea Nacho was going to be the obvious pick.
No, but he played quite well. He started well, and then, as we said before, he hit that brick wall. I feel like he had one or two poor outings, and then all of a sudden it was just, well, I'm not going to play him anymore. And I don't think that's how it works. You don't necessarily. Maitland-Niles
did a great job, but it's right. It's like a feast or famine sometimes.
Right, and I hate that. There's all this talk about, Kolasinac never played left back. He was always a left wing back at Schalke. That's not true at all. He played left back plenty at Schalke. He was used further forward as well. He was actually used a lot last season as a left midfielder, where he got further forward, and that's why he got more goals and more assists. But he didn't make the Bundesliga team of the year as a left back by being a poor left back, considering the left backs that were in the Bundesliga last year. David Alaba and Ricardo Rodriguez and players of that ilk. That's a lot of competition for him to come through, and fans voted him to be the best. So I just feel like his weaknesses are more exposed in our team. He's good on the ball, but when he makes mistakes on the ball, they're killer mistakes. And because, again, as we've seen, we lack a team that supports each other efficiently enough, when your left back makes a mistake, it's going to cost you.
And we already have a guy in the back four whose mistakes are deadly when he makes them, and then that's Koscielny. I mean,
right.
he makes the worst mistakes. He doesn't make them all the time. But
if you have those two on the same side of the pitch, it could be deadly. So I don't know if it's that Wenger doesn't rate him. I think it's Wenger trying to limit the amount of exposure that our defense is going to get to situations they shouldn't be in. He still has to settle. It's his first season. Give him time to settle. Monreal's not getting any younger as well. I don't think Ainsley Maitland's future is at left back anyway. So I think, barring something where we sell him in the summer, I think we'll see him again next season. I think eventually he'll win over the starting job. He needs time to settle. I think that's normal. You could say the same thing for Lacazette. He needs time to settle.
You want that guy in our squad no matter what. I mean, even if he's not starting as he was early in the season.
Yeah, of course. And if he's not the starter for this season, he's a capable backup. He brings something different than Monreal has. He's an absolute physical beast. He can win those physical battles. He also is pretty solid in the air, but.
I mean, when our backups go from being Ignacy Mikel to Sead Kolasinac, I think we've come come some way.
Exactly. So I think they just need time. But Kolasinac more than Xhaka. Xhaka needs more than just time. I think he's had enough time now. I think it's about actually managing him, coaching him, fixing his mistakes. But if that doesn't happen, they won't get fixed.
So the sum of the story is, Fredo, be fucking patient. They just need some time. Stop being such a dick. Okay, dude. Speaking of which, the second part of his question, how do you say bag of dicks in German?
There's two ways. You can say eine
I have
Tasche.
one pronunciation here I'm going to test.
There's eine Tasche voll Schwanzi, or there's ein Beutel von Schwanzi.
Oh, okay. I used Google Translate and it came back with Sack mit Schwanzen.
You could say, I mean, you could just say sack as just ball sack, but that's just obviously that's an English word. But those are the two ways.
It was Google, or it was translate.google.com/pervert. So maybe I didn't get the best explanation. Okay, so next question from Joe Zalak, who is the gooner on the Dinner and the Podcast panel, which is a podcast not about Arsenal, but it's one I think is hilarious. I love listening to these guys. Sebi actually turned us on to these guys. They're up in your neck of the woods, Drew. Funny stuff, especially if you like sci-fi comics and all that stuff, which I don't, but I still find it funny. Andy, who got fucked harder yesterday? Liverpool by the refs or Dele Alli?
Oh man.
Or who sucked more, I guess, is another question.
Jeez, seriously. I don't really know the Dele Alli situation because obviously I know that there's apparently a sex tape. I saw some funny.
That is the situation.
Yeah, I saw some funny pictures that some Arsenal supporters were posting, but
I'm surprised that Sebi hasn't done anything
seriously,
disgusting involving that picture and my.
Well, the funny one was the best one I saw was the Sky Sports lineup, and it was like Kane and his, and there was Ollie holding his junk, and then
basically, who knew that Marouane Fellaini's hair is now being used for Dele Alli's crop?
I can't say I've seen the video. It sounds like you have, Mike.
I've seen screenshots.
Here's the thing. It's absolutely absurd and disgusting to see how Liverpool were cheated yesterday, and it continuously happens with Tottenham. And I'm not saying this because we absolutely despise and hate the team, but enough's enough. There's supposed to be a retro ban. You made a huge point of it before the league started that it was going to happen. Lamela was not even fucking touched for that penalty, and nor was any other player that went down in the box. And for it to happen the way it did, for it to happen so late in the game, and then to have, and this could totally be made up, but the video of the audio of the referee.
No, that audio is legit.
Then something has to be done. Either a referee needs to lose his job, the FA needs to take action, and to not ban these players is absolutely absurd because. It's the best result for us having both those teams drop points, but you got to feel a little bit for Liverpool because they score a beautiful goal and then they just go, and it's absolute cheating. And what really pissed me off, Mike, was after he went down and dove, and then Kane scored the goal. They go and celebrate like they've won the World Cup. Their supporters have to be?
That's because it was his 100th goal with 0 trophies, and they're all in the locker. I mean, it is such a pathetic.
But someone in their fan base has to be embarrassed. I remember watching Perez back when I was younger.
No one
and
is.
every once in a while, you'd just be embarrassed. It's like, great player. Why add that? I remember watching Cristiano Ronaldo when he first came to United, and the one biggest frustration was you watch this kid who you were like, the world is his oyster, and now you see the player he's turned into. You knew back in the day how good he was going to be, and I think the one thing that infuriated Man United fans more than anything else was how quickly and easily he went down. And once his own fan base got on his back, that stopped. It was like almost immediately. But you know who else got on his back?
Well,
Mike?
didn't that
The
happen
press.
because of the World Cup episode with Rooney?
No, maybe, but I think
we need one of those situations.
But more importantly, the press got on his back. The press were calling him out. The press, like Drew said before, see Tottenham as the darlings of the Premier League. They're the Cinderella team. I don't know how many fucking seasons in a row you have to be the Cinderella team, but they're the Cinderella. They were the Cinderella team when Leicester won the league. Like that's how ridiculous the press are with this team, and so something's got to stop. And so who got fucked harder? Definitely Liverpool. But you know what? There should be retroactive. He should be. Here's the thing.
You heard Kane's comment today, right?
No, I didn't. I'm sorry.
He said it was a penalty. I felt the contact and went down. Like he's basically admitting that he went down voluntarily and feels that it was rationalized by the fact that he felt contact. It wasn't that he just went down without being touched. It's that he felt contact, and so I went down.
Well, so then every time a defender puts a hand on an offensive player on a corner kick, then there has to be a penalty if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean the guys they're fucking cheaters, and they have the press in their pocket for whatever reason. The whole English player thing, I think the best thing that can come out of this is when it starts becoming someone other than Arsenal supporters and Arsenal's coach complaining about it. And so maybe in the long run, this is the beginning of a turning of the tide when Liverpool, who doesn't, the media doesn't hate Liverpool, lately. And so I just think maybe the tide is turning, but it's disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Drew, from Schwinn, how do we fit Jack into this team? Do you see Wenger dropping Iwobi for him against the scum? I want both of your answers actually, but Drew, you go first.
Honestly, I feel like some sort of tactical change needs to happen against Spurs. We have this notion where we still try to impose our style of play away from home, and that gets us screwed over away from home this season particularly. So I feel like additional midfield cover is needed for against Spurs. I just feel like they're so good at hitting on a break at pace, and because as we discussed before, if you go with a Xhaka Ramsey midfield pairing, there's going to be a lot of space within the midfield and the back four, and they can get exposed. So you could maybe drop Iwobi, shift Özil to one of the flanks, Mkhitaryan on the other flank, Oba up top, and you can go with a 3-man midfield. The question is then, who do you put as the deepest midfielder? Because if it's Xhaka, you did have to instruct them, do not go past Ramsey or Wilshere. Just shield the back four. That's your only job for today. Don't do anything else. If you do that,
and who's going to tell him that?
Exactly, that's the problem. But I think, in theory, you could go to a 4-3-3, maybe sit back, surrender over possession, try to counter through Oba's pace, through Mkhitaryan as well. You could put Wilshere and Ramsey in midfield, and then you have a holding midfielder behind them. You could give Ainsley Maitland-Niles his chance there, or you could go with the safer option and put Xhaka there. But I think what Ramsey brings to the table, and how Wenger does like him as a player quite a bit, you do have to question that maybe Wilshere is not going to be starting as many games because now that Ramsey's back. But who we're kidding, Ramsey will get injured next weekend anyway, and then Wilshere will come back in the first.
All we have to do is another live podcast watching a game, and when I start talking about how great Ramsey is, and I'll get hurt like 5 minutes later. That's what happened last time.
There you go.
So Andy, I have an answer, and I want your opinion on it. We have an opportunity here because Petr Cech's probably not going to play on Sunday, on Saturday. I put Jack in. I mean, and then start hacking down their players for penalties because we're going to get penalties. Oh, and by the way, how great of a news is that Czech might not be able to play against a team that's sure to get 2 or 3 penalties.
Oh yeah. And Ospina might save those. Here's what I would do, Mike. I would drop Iwobi, but I would put Kolasinac in, and I would put him in a defensive midfielder role, and I would just look at him and I would point to Ali and Kane, and I would say, fucking destroy both of those cunts in this game. I don't care if you get a red. I want them fucking destroyed.
And 2 for 1, baby.
That would be my change. But no, Jack fits into the team. I almost would say that I would drop Iwobi, but I would put Ramsey in that role and just let him kind of rein forward. As I said, I think Jack has the tendency to drop back. I think the best option for us is to almost have a Jack Elneny midfield for this match, and just say to Elneny, as Drew said, sit in front of the floor in the back and don't go forward, and just side to side and close everything down. Once you get the ball, find Mkhitaryan, Ozil, Wilshere, Ramsey. Just get ball to their feet and stay where you're at. But nothing will change. I'm almost certain we're going to have that same lineup with probably the keeper change. But it's going to be hard for Jack to get back. Yeah,
he doesn't really like changing things up after 5-1 wins.
No, he doesn't.
Except to bench the person with the hat trick. He'll probably bench Ramsey, given his track record of benching people who get hat tricks.
I would say fuck it and just go a 4-4-2 personally in this one.
Well, yeah. While that may be a good idea, that is not going to be happening.
No, it won't. But something's got to be different. We got to go in with a different lineup. We got to go in with change.
Well, thank you, Schwinn. We have 2 very general questions. Scratching my head a little bit on this one from Arian 3000, and it's Arian. It's not the kind of Arian that you're thinking about, Drew.
I know. I talk to him all the time.
Oh, okay. So I would be worried if it was Arian with a Y. I didn't even think about that till it just came out of my mouth. But all right, so that's why he's asking questions. It's just for you. First, what is your prediction for the summer? And I, is he talking about the weather forecast?
I think, given the discussions him and I have had over the last week about
he's talking transfer window.
I think he's talking about transfer window.
Okay, because I thought maybe like my prediction is Drew's going to get a webcam finally. Andy's going to have ACL surgery, and it'll be like high of 65 and sunny. I mean, that's what I'm going with. But all right, so since you know what he's talking about better than I do,
I mean, that's my assumption. If that is the case, I would say we'll take a serious look at a keeper. News aside about the Oblak and the Timo Horn news, I mean, Czech is going to be he's already in decline if you ask me, but it's only going to get worse because he's not getting any younger. I don't think Ospina wants to be a backup any longer. I think he deserves to go and be first choice somewhere. And I don't think Emiliano Martinez is going to be cut out for first team football at Arsenal, to be completely honest with you. He's never made it anywhere that he's been loaned out to. I don't think
it almost seems like Macy's on that track more than Martinez.
Exactly. I do think that. I think you want to keep Macy in the team, but I don't think he's ready to be the deputy. I think what you could do is you could go out and buy a keeper in the summer and make Czech the number 2 for the last year of his contract. And then once that happens, then you already have Macy as the backup immediately after that. And then Czech can still mentor Macy. Czech can still lend some advice to whatever keeper you do bring in, if you do bring in one. I think for me that'd be the most sensible way forward.
It's kind of the way it ended for him at Chelsea is, when Courtois came in, it was Czech over Courtois until Courtois was ready. Fucking French guy who's not French. He's Belgian, but and then Czech's last year there, he was backing him up.
Yeah. And I also think we'll take a serious look at the center back. At least I hope we take a serious look at the center back. And then you'd have to say maybe it really depends if Wenger's manager or not. But I do think we need some midfield reinforcements. I don't think everything we have now is good enough because, as we just spoke about before, we don't have that one player we can plug into a lineup and say, don't do anything but win the ball back and give it to somebody else and let them do the creating. Just win the ball. We need a ball-winning midfielder desperately, one who's really efficient at it. So
I saw a picture in the last 24 hours of a ball-winning midfielder.
Well played.
But all right. And the second question from Arian is why do I have blonde hair and blue eyes? No, it's Mexican or Chinese. Another general question that can be taken in a lot of different directions, but I'll leave it up to you to interpret.
Probably Chinese. There's nothing like, going out drinking and then getting Chinese at 2 a.m.
All right, so you're thinking he's talking about food.
I assume.
I thought he was talking about Carlos Vela versus I don't know who, but all right. So yeah, and anything else I say is probably going to end up coming out completely in a way where I'm going to have to apologize. So my answer to that is yes, Mexican and Chinese. From Mike Hernandez, Andy, is Wenger and the board doing a better job at giving a new manager a better chance of succeeding than Fergie did when he left United, taking into consideration the age of the players, the stage of their contracts, and the level of the current squad?
I don't know. It's a great question, Mike Hernandez.
I'm like,
just wanted to make sure. I think Arsene and the board are doing a good job at giving whoever our next manager is a good chance. I mean, we have a very good team, and I think the frustration has always been how better would this team be if we actually allowed the coaches to give them one-on-one instruction and push them to that next level. I think that's one thing that Alex Ferguson always did at United. And you know what? The blueprint was there for Moyes. I just don't think he was the right manager. It was too big of a program. You need a Mourinho-type character that can fill those shoes at a club of that size. That's my biggest concern with bringing in someone who's small enough, because you hear about the stories before George Graham was Arsenal manager of managers coming in that just didn't understand how big the program was, how big it would be for the likes of the next manager. They need to know the shoes that they're filling, and so hopefully the next manager who comes in only has to coach, only has to do tactical, can bring in whatever staff it is, but everything else is taken care of. You have your director of football, you've got the board saying, hey, we're going to give you the support you need, but just be prepared to just players, tactics, matches. That's all you have to worry about. And so hopefully these changes we're seeing are being made for the next person. I think that when you look at this team, Mike, we've got dead wood we still need to get rid of. But I don't want to give up in Chambers and Holding yet because I don't feel like they've been coached. I really don't. I don't feel like they've gotten the opportunity to be given tutelage from Bold, from Adams, from a Keown, and those are the players we need to be inviting back. So yeah. I think the board are pushing us in the right direction, and I think the next manager that needs to come in needs to be someone who understands the job they're taking, how big of a job they're taking. Because, you can bitch and moan on Arsene all you want. The man's charisma and professionalism in press conferences when he's asked the same question 30 times over for 16 straight weeks, he doesn't break, he doesn't bend, and a Mourinho wouldn't do that. And I think that the next manager who comes in needs to know this is it. Like, you're walking into one of the biggest sports franchises in the world, not just in football, across all of sports. And, I don't know.
You're going to be looked at with a microscope.
A microscope. Oh, think of our fan base if we bring in a fucking no-namer who starts, loses the opening match. So, yeah.
That is so ridiculous, but true.
Yeah.
Like,
so, yeah,
one
the irony that Wenger was basically a no-name when he came in, and look what he built.
Exactly.
That's the irony of it.
Exactly. And we would never give another opportunity to another person like that. So to answer Mike's question, when long answered, I think that the board are doing the right thing, and I hope that Arsene is going to be part of the process handing this over, because we can't bring in a manager who just wants to sit back and defend. That's not the program that was built. So you almost need to bring in a manager who can slot right in. As we said a couple of weeks ago, Pep was the perfect candidate. We played Pep football. So, yeah, fingers crossed we do better than United have done. because they're still catching up to the Fergie time.
Although you do have to give Fergie credit for locking in Bebe before he left for £1 million. I mean, that just, if that didn't set them off, I don't know how Moyes screwed that up, but yeah, he had Bebe. 2 more questions. One is from the Texas Gooner for Drew. Since you follow both Arsenal and Dortmund very closely, unless your Twitter handle is just a complete coincidence, but how weird is it, on the level of weird, to see 2 former top quality Dortmund players now at Arsenal, and especially given our track record with January transfers, are you shocked we picked both of them up during the same window?
I think it's shocking, but it's not. Aubameyang wanted to go, and he made that abundantly clear. He was clear in the summer he wanted to leave, and he's been clear in summers past where he's always talked about how he saw his future. He wanted to go to Real Madrid. There's that whole story about promising, I think it was his grandmother, that we'd go play at Real Madrid. So he's been vocal about wanting to leave. It was just a matter of when he was going to leave. So I'm not shocked that he left Dortmund. I am a little shocked that we got him, just guessing the nature of it. No one thought. Yeah,
that's the thing. Those players just end up at Chelsea
right.
in the past.
And the thing is no one was in for Aubameyang this window. No one except us.
That's an interesting question. Why not?
I just feel like the teams who he would want to go play for didn't need center forwards. Think about all the top clubs in Europe.
Or they were looking for one that fit a very different mold. Like
exactly,
Chelsea.
like a target man, like Chelsea needed to fit Conte's style of play. That's exactly right. So for what he brings to the table, you could say that he suits us more than a Chelsea, obviously. So the fact that we had the chance to get him, I am a little bit surprised, but by the fact that we spent the money because we just bought Lacazette in the summer. I think if we didn't get Lacazette in the summer and we were just running with what we had, obviously I don't think it would have been nearly as shocking.
And that's the biggest sign to me. That and the fact that we actually pulled the trigger on the Theo sale are the biggest signs to me that some of the new backroom staff and administrative staff are having an influence on this, because it's just so on Wenger-like.
Well, of course they are, but I think that's how it should
Sven's out there spending the money and making the deal. Right?
Jesus Christ. No, but I do feel like there are now, or at least they're attempted to give those clearly defined roles about who's doing what in what capacity. As Andy just said, Wenger has to, or whoever the manager comes in after him, it's just about tactics, about training, about the player aspect. After that, you leave negotiating and worrying about what player is worth what value. That's not the manager's job, and that's what people got so angry about with Wenger before. He always talked about his financial degrees, and he feels like this player was worth less than what they were being quoted. But that's not your job. Let the director, let the DOF go out and do that. So send Leahy. That's his job now. Let him worry about it.
This is not an efficient market.
Exactly. You give your the things you want to improve in the team, you give your long list to Sven, let Sven scout it, then you meet with Sven, come up with the short list, and you give that short list to Sven Leahy and let Sven Leahy go do the business. And that's the modern way of doing it. That's that process. If we're going to progress from that and continuously do it, then I think we're going to be better for it. I think this window showed it. I'm not surprised Mkhitaryan left United, because you look at him at his time in Dortmund and you knew he was never a Mourinho kind of player. It doesn't matter how well he started off in the first couple of weeks at United. Mourinho likes the Williams of the world, and Mkhitaryan, for all his qualities he does have coming back and defending, he's still not a Mourinho player. I'm not surprised it didn't work.
What do you think the price would have been on the open market this summer for a Mkhitaryan? Given his underperformance at United, but relatively fresh age, and what do you think it would have been for a Dortmund to get him back, for instance?
Between 20 and 30 million, I would say.
Really?
Do you think
in this market?
I think so. Based off of the fact that he wasn't first choice at the club, he was struggling to get into the 11. He's just about 29 now, I do believe. And again, the form on him wasn't great, and statistically, for what he did contribute when he did play, wasn't great for them either. So I think if you look at all the factors, he couldn't command a massive fee. At least I don't think. Whether United would have demanded a big fee or not is another story. Yeah. But I think for actual value, I think it would have been about the 30 million mark, which is ironically what we were going to get for Sanchez if we got money from him anyways.
I've been saying we paid $30 million for a $45 million player or pound player in this market, which obviously it's all inflated to begin with. But all right, well that's good. And then the last question from our old buddy Danny the GFP, for his old buddy Drew, he had to chime in. Man loves a nice warm bath. Should Arsenal's next away kit be yellow and black, just like Dortmund's, so that the boomerang and Mikki feel home?
I would do it, but you also think back to that yellow and black one with the Sega on the front of it from back in 99.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that brings back some decent memories, and I like that away strip anyway. So you could maybe throw that back a little bit. But one thing is for sure is that we should ditch Puma immediately and go to Adidas.
Absolutely.
And I'm a big Puma fan.
Adidas, as they like to say.
Yeah, I'm a big Puma fan. Like I have a lot of Puma apparel, and all my new running sneakers are Puma. But Adidas, they're doing much better things in regards to football kits. So I'd say we should, and it's more money for us as well. It's a bigger kit deal. More money in the bank will help us do things like upping the youth coaching budget, upping the facilities, getting a bit more players in if that's what we're aiming to do. So all those things can benefit. So yeah.
I either love a yellow and black combination or hate them. I mean, Pittsburgh Penguins in hockey, hate them.
Yep.
But Dortmund, man, it's the only other kit that I wear. Mainly because it's the only other kit I was able to find in my size, but other than Arsenal kits, it's the only one, and I got it when I went there last year, and they're easy to like, but it looks fantastic. So yeah, I mean, I would, as untraditional as it is, I would go for that as an away jersey, as away kit. Andy, would you be up for the yellow and black?
I'd be up for just going back to yellow. I think that, these blue
solid
kits.
Yellow?
No, I wouldn't mind going. There's always blue.
Bruised banana?
Excuse me. There's always. See, that's why we need to go back to Adidas. Like I said, go back to those I've got some friends who are United supporters, and they're rocking these old United retro stuff because Adidas are bringing it back. They're doing great things, but yellow and black, I'm not sure.
And is JVC even are they still a thing? Because I would go back to having them on the shirt even if it's not even a going concern anymore. I'm looking them up now. It looks like they still do actually make stuff.
Can we just have one kit that says JVC and then our away kit just says Dreamcast on it?
Dreamcast. Commodore 64. Excellent. So, all right. Well, thank you, users, for your user questions. We are, other than Danny's podcast, we are probably the second longest Arsenal podcast that comes out every week, and I'm sorry for the duration of it, but we've had so many good things to talk about. Couple final thoughts. I haven't updated I used to, at the end of every pod, talk about new countries that we've added on, and when we hit the 100 mark, we pretty much retired that bit. But I just looked at it earlier tonight just to see, in the last month or two if we picked up any more. And there's a trend happening here, Andy, and let's see if you can identify the trend as we go along. We've added 7 new countries recently. Okay. One of them is the Faroe Islands, which isn't part of the trend. One of them is Anguilla, which is nice because we added Antigua a long time ago. So clearly,
Caribbean.
We're going Caribbean. Well, Faroe Islands aren't Caribbean, but
but you said that's not part of the trend.
Well, neither is Anguilla. But then we have.
When does the trend start?
It starts right now.
Okay.
Gibraltar, Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, Botswana, and Rwanda have come on the Gooners and USA train. So something's happening here.
Yeah.
Something's happening in Africa. We got Mozambique in a long time ago.
The Beak, the Beak will always be the biggest. They're always going to be the best African country in our hearts. But for the rest of you, thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I have no idea. I mean, I swear to God, I'm not making this up. It sounds like I'm making it up. We have this program, this website that shows us where the listeners are coming from. I can't verify how accurate it is, but I'm not making up the names of the countries. So, I don't know what people are tuning into us for in those places. If they have anything better to do, but thank you very much for listening.
I clearly didn't.
Well. And we hope that you'll keep doing it, because despite the comments that both of us are making right now, we love you, we need you, we want you. Tweet us if you're listening in one of these countries and let us know who you are. We would love to, to find a way of sending you a bag of dicks or something like that. And I know we're going to get a tweet tomorrow from @MileHighbury saying, "Hey, I'm your Ethiopian listener." But sorry, Joey, you cannot trick us. So if you get a chance, if you're listening to us on YouTube, please give us a review. It's been a while since we have asked for one. It's been a while since we got one. A rating and a review would be lovely. And if you're listening to us on SoundCloud or YouTube, if we upload it, subscribe, and we'll be notified every time a new pod comes out. We've seen some new people picking up on the show in the last couple of weeks, and we hope that you'll interact with us, ask us user questions and stuff. And, because if we don't do that, then we're going to run out of shit to say. Next week, we will be back with a review of the massive North London derby, which is a home game for us at Wembley. Mm-hmm. And, we are hoping to be able to package into that podcast a pre-Europa League chat with Matthias Karen. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his last name, but he is a ESPN correspondent who covers Arsenal. He's based out of London, but of course he's known as the Drew Thompson of Sweden. so he should have some, I don't know if he knows that or not, but he should have some useful nuggets about Östersund, who we will be playing on Thursday after the Spurs game. So looking forward to next week's show, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Drew. It's been a pleasure.
It's been good to finally come on. I actually really enjoyed it.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, you can tell in your voice how much you enjoy it.
Listen, I'm always monotone. You can never tell what I'm thinking or feeling.
I do, and the fact that you just said that, actually, I'll sleep easy tonight. And hopefully the both of us will encounter you again on a future Gooner Talk TV or something like that. But
whenever you guys, come on or whatever have you, sure.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Andy. Have a great week.
Thank you, sir. You boys, thank you for entertaining the pod as always. Mike, I know I hold you ransom to do this. Drew, thank you so much for being on.
I don't have a choice. I've been locked out of my home until the podcast was done, so I'll return home and we'll get this out to you as soon as possible. And come on, you Gunners.